Let me pray for our food. Lord, thank you so much for this time we can be together. Thank you for this rain that we know that we need here and weather-wise, and help us to get through this. Thank you for the promise of the rainbow and that the next 10 days of rain won't be apocalyptic. Lord, we pray for a great time of fellowship and a great time of learning and considering carefully our next steps in life. Thank you for the folks who will be presenting and for the truth that they'll be presenting. Just help the food to nourish and strengthen us and use us for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm Clayton Wood. I'm the executive director of Wears Valley Ranch, and today I'm the MC of this program. And I will not be giving a long impromptu talk, but I want to give a short impromptu talk. And I want to, how many of you, go ahead and raise your hand if you've heard of frustration of donative intent. You're getting a little bit from, we have other lawyers who are more effective than I am at planning. But I'm going to tell you about right down the road, close to Cherokee Country Club, a beautiful, beautiful home that was donated to the University of Tennessee. And the gift was given so that the University of Tennessee could use it in furtherance of programs there. At some point, probably, the expressed hope was also tied to being a president's residence for the school. Beautiful house, historic house, important house. At one point in time, and I will not name names, a lawyer who I'm friends with was part of the group who was saying, for UT, on behalf of UT, let's not fix the roof and let the thing fall down so that we can sell the land. Because as long as the house is up, we can't do it. But if the house falls down, then we can sell the land and they can put condos or whatever there, and UT will just get money, which is at this point what they wanted. I went into a deeply, probably overly moral, impassioned plea, because it's just a house, but I love history, and I also think that honoring the wishes of people who give is important. That it was wicked to contemplate doing that. They stabilized the roof. It ended up going to a foundation, and today you can go to the Eugenia Williams house and look at it. It's beautiful, it's restored, and it'll, I don't know, be some kind of a nonprofit home of something or other. The reason I bring that up is wherever you invest in the long term, frustration of donative intent happens a ton. And frustration of donative intent happens often because of mission drift of the organization. Now, it is extraordinarily rare, so rare that I couldn't point out many times, that you go, those dadgum conservatives took over something. I can't believe I just gave to the Marxist Party and now it's a bunch of libertarians. It's just not common. You don't hear about it very often. But what you do hear about are organizations like Belmont, which was given an enormous amount of money explicitly by Baptists for Baptist education, having a single donor in our lifetime recently say, kick all the Baptists off the board or we're not going to give. And they said, okay, great, and they did. That kind of thing has happened over and over and over and over. So when you consider what your long-term plans are, an important thing to consider is the likelihood that your gift will last with your wishes. And there are organizations that have a track record of making that happen, and there are other organizations that don't. And I don't need to name any of them except to tell you that frustration of donative intent happens regularly 10, 20, and 30 years after someone passes. And if you want to know whether or not that's going to happen to you, look at what someone's done over the last 10, 20, and 30 years. My dad's going to speak now and bring us a devotional teaching.
All right.
I did, yes, sir.
All right. And that tells you how my memory is these days. I'm delighted to get to share with you, and I want to thank you for being here today. When my dad was a student at Moody Bible Institute in Chicago back in the 1930s, America was in a horrible depression, and crime in inner city Chicago was extremely high, violent crime. The gangsters were there, Al Capone, who everybody knows of, was in operation, and it was a tough place. My dad was working his way through Moody, training for ministry, and earning his keep by working at the Ford plant. And one night after working a double shift, Dad had gone to catch the streetcar to go back to where he lived. And he saw a very distinguished looking gentleman standing there in a nice overcoat and a newspaper folded into fourths that he was looking at, and a briefcase in the other hand. And Dad saw him and thought, I have not shared the gospel with anybody today. And Dad had made a commitment in one of the chapel services at Moody that he would try to share the gospel with at least one person every day. Well, Dad was by nature somewhat shy and introverted, but he was also a man who was always determined to keep his commitments. So Dad looked at that man and thought, this is probably my last chance. So he stepped a little bit toward him. Now, picture my dad, who had just worked a double shift at Ford, who was a young man who by 5 o'clock definitely had 5 o'clock shadow, and this was about 10 or 11 at night. So his face was stubbly, and his voice was much deeper than I could begin to imitate. He had his collar turned up against the cold, and he took another step toward the man, and the man, not looking directly at Dad, but just kind of stepped away a little bit. And Dad waited a moment and took another step toward the man, and the man took another step away from Dad. And then the streetcar began to come into view. And Dad thought, it's now or never. So he stepped right up in the man's face and said, Mister, are you ready to meet God? And the man broke into a run and jumped onto the streetcar while it was still moving. And my dad stood there and thought, what just happened? See, Dad knew why he was asking the question. But my hope is that when Dad got to heaven, he got to see that man again. And the man said, I couldn't get your question out of my mind. Every single one of us knows, unless we're insane, that we're going to have to die someday. But most people don't want to think about it. So I want to talk with you briefly about 3 questions. The first is, are you ready to die? Are you ready to die? In Luke chapter 12, Jesus is speaking to a crowd. Beginning in verse 4, he says, I tell you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that can do no more. But I will show you whom you should fear. Fear him whom after killing the body has power to throw you into hell. Yes, I tell you, fear him. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Jesus says, do not be afraid of dying. Don't be afraid of it. If you're trusting in God, you don't have to fear death. But you do need to be prepared for it. And so my first question is very simple and very blunt. Are you ready to die? I believe that is one of the most important questions that anyone can ever face. And God has given us in Christ Jesus the answer that takes away our fear. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son so that whoever trusts in him will not be destroyed, will not perish, but will have everlasting life. Because God didn't send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but so that through him the world might be saved. So we can face the future, and we can face the prospect and the certainty of death without fear. As a pastor, I've gotten a lot of calls from people who've just gotten a bad diagnosis. And if I know the person well, I often say to them, you may not live long enough to die of this illness, which is not what they expected to hear. I also tell them, however, you may outlive your doctor, because I've known people who were given a very short span of time and ended up living for years. And I've known other people who got a very good bill of health and died. We don't know when we'll be called home, but we all know that we will be. We're all going to have to face God. So, question one, are you ready to die? Until you're ready to die, I would submit to you, you're not really ready to live. You're not going to live the way that you should unless you've already dealt with the question of death and what happens when you die. Once you have peace with God, you can live with freedom and without fear in this world. There are a lot, I grew up around old people. My grandmother lived until 1 week before her 101st birthday. My dad died at 87 and a half. I was born late in my parents' life. Dad was about to turn 48 3 weeks after I was born. Mom was 43 when I was born. She died at age 99. It is likely that despite my declining health, I will probably continue to creak on for decades. I'm going to be 72, God willing, in July, but there's a very good chance that I could last another 25, 30 years. It won't be fun, I know. And it won't be fun for the people who have to take care of me. But I am absolutely at peace about the fact that God says in His Word, He has numbered our days. It's all written. God knows the end from the beginning. He's not waiting with bated breath to see what's going to happen. And God is working it all for good. But sometimes people don't live well because they've already kind of given up. Isaac spent at least 40 years waiting to die. You remember the story of how he lost his eyesight, which is one of the things that's happening to me these days. As he lost his eyesight, he decided, well, I guess this is it. I'll be dead soon. And so he told his son Esau, go and hunt some game for me and cook it the way I like and bring it to me, and then I'll give you my blessing. He was in bed without good eyesight, waiting to die. And his eyesight really was gone. He couldn't tell Jacob from Esau except by touch and by scent, and that's how he got fooled. But he wasn't ready to live. And I've known many, many people who, as they got older, just quit because they weren't willing or ready to live day by day, taking the day as a gift from God. There's a purpose in it. There's a reason I'm still here. I'm very grateful that I can come and speak. I'm losing my vision. I'm losing my voice. I'm losing my energy. But I'm still able to be here. And I just got a request to preach in India in 2027. I brought it to my wife and I said, we'll have to pray about this. And she looked at the thing and she said, ask him if you can do it by Zoom. But the fact is, God has a purpose. If you're here, it's for a reason. Are you ready to live? Some people are worried that financially, their family's going to be fine if they die, but things could get dicey if they live. Why would a person be concerned about finances? Well, I'm just going to, in case you don't already have anxiety, going to try and feed the potential for anxiety by offering you an example of what can happen if the government is irresponsible with things like the national debt. I have in my hand a bill. This is authentic. This is not counterfeit. This is the real deal. And it says $100 trillion. It's real. $100 trillion. It's from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. Okay? That's what happens with hyperinflation. If a government doesn't understand the need to keep their currency valuable, it's just fiat currency and they can just print as much as they want and continue to run up debts. I mean, thank God we don't live in a country that would do that. Pardon me. But the fact is, you and I don't control that. So what happens if all the stuff that I've saved becomes worthless? Well, God is still on the throne. And I've had to hold on to the fact I've been blessed by the Lord to be able to take care of my family. But what if I'm not here and things spiral out of control? Then my family would have to just depend on God, the same God who provided for me, the same God who's provided for them. Our oldest son was born with severe birth defects, and we were told not to expect him to live past age 13. God willing, he'll be 48 in September. Now, does he have serious health issues? Yes, he does. But the fact that he's alive is a miracle every day. And the doctors who know his case say it's amazing, absolutely amazing. God is the one who has preserved him. God is the one who's preserved each of us. That's why we're here today, is because of God's faithful provision. So, are you ready to live? Are you ready to die? Are you ready to live? One more question. Are you ready to give? Jesus, in this same passage, goes on to tell them this is from Luke 12, in verses 13 through 21, he tells them a story about a man who was extremely successful financially and thought it was all for him. And he just kept building bigger barns. And he is known as the rich fool. It's the parable of the rich fool. We're all familiar with it. But here's what Jesus says. This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich toward God. It's okay to store up some things, but it's not okay not to be rich toward God. How do we behave in a manner that's rich toward God? Well, again, the question, are you ready to give? Jesus goes on in this same chapter, and he says, from everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who is entrusted with much, much more will be asked. God gives to us so that we can bless others. It's not all for us. You're here today because you care about stewardship. You're here today because you know that what we are entrusted with is not our own. All of us are going to give an account to God. And all of us, therefore, need to regard what's entrusted to us as His and say, what would you have me do? Andy graciously shared with me some advice that I had given to him years ago, and that is you can never do better than to trust God. Is that the gist of what I said? You can't. God is faithful. Everything else can fail, but God will not fail. All kinds of corporations and so forth and organizations can fail to keep their promises. God always keeps His. And so if we do what we believe God is telling us to do, we're doing the good thing. I encourage you. Jesus said, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Be ready, be prepared, but don't be afraid. You can live without fear if you're trusting in God and doing what He says. Thank you for letting me share.
All right. We're thankful to have Andrew Wallace as our next speaker, and there will be a slideshow presentation as well, I believe. So it'll warm up, and technical difficulties are a part of every great presentation. Feel free to grab another beverage.
How you doing, bro? Well, good afternoon. When Lisa asked me to join you, I said, tell me a little bit about what I'm getting into. She said, we're going to feed them a really good meal. Jim, who's an excellent speaker that I know is going to talk, and then you're going to cram really complex tax subjects into 15 minutes and hope that you don't put them to sleep. So join with me. I'll try to make this concise. My heart is you wouldn't be here if you weren't trying to be a better steward. And the reality is I do believe that those that write the tax code keep it sufficiently complicated so as to give them job security and to fund their power through taxes. And so although we all should pay our keep, paying no more than that, I think, is our mandate. Let me qualify this by saying I'm not a CPA or tax preparer, but I am a certified financial planner. I grew up in East Tennessee, got a chance to go to Carson Newman, jumped out of perfectly good airplanes, only to decide that coming back home was the smart bet, and have been back here for 25 years. My office is in Sevierville, as well as we have one just down the road here in Knoxville that I work from. To that end, I've got 4 key things that I'm going to try to cover. And really my goal here is not to fundraise, it's to say, how do we remove friction from the way that we give? So I hope that you walk out of here with one or two nuggets that takes the dollars that you are giving and gets more of them to the ministry that you care about instead of the government that maybe we don't. So I'm going to cover directing, growing, timing, and prepare. And I'm going to start with direct because it's kind of in an island all to itself. So I suspect most everyone in here has a pre-tax retirement plan, whether that's an IRA, SEP IRA, simple IRA, 401k, 403b, 457. Those dollars went into that plan before you paid any taxes. And the federal government gave you that tax break. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, if you had $1,000 and you owed $200 in taxes and you would have gone home with $800, you really were investing $800 of yours and $200 of Uncle Sam's pre-tax. What happens is at 73, we all know, the federal government says pre-tax deferral is over and we want some skin. And so this thing called required minimum distributions happens. And in essence, your 1231 value of the preceding year is divided by a life expectancy table. Now, to oversimplify that, because we all understand percentages, it starts off at 3.8% at 73, and of course, as we get older, even if we don't have the genes of Jim and his family, our life expectancy decreases. And as our life expectancy decreases, that percentage increases. And so all the federal government is making us do is take a withdrawal. We don't give it all, we just run it through our tax return finally. And the old way was that you pulled it out of whatever the retirement account was, paid the taxes, put it in your bank account, and either lived off of it or were generous with it. The qualified charitable distribution is the better route. You send the money direct to the ministry and it bypasses going through the tax filter. So if your required minimum distribution is $10,000 and it goes direct to the ministry, you have zero taxable income and the ministry has usage of all those funds. Now, a common question I get amongst the clients that I serve is, do I have to send all of my RMD? And the short answer is no. Or do I have to send it all to the same charity? And again, the answer is no. So you can be strategic with this, but it's in essence the same generosity with a cleaner path and no unnecessary taxation. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about growing assets. Now, this could be stock or it could be property. It's anything that you purchased at a price at one point that's worth more now. At some point, as you look to potentially liquidate those assets, whether it's a piece of property you're selling or a stock that you're reallocating or liquidating to live off of, in the normal path, you would sell that appreciated stock first, pay whatever capital gains tax that was due, and then give or live on what remains. A better path is to give the stock or the appreciated asset directly to charity with the full value reaching that ministry and avoiding the capital gains altogether. So here we have a stock, or again, it can be a piece of property, a business that has a $20,000 basis, or that's your total cost for your acquisition, and it's now worth $80,000. The full $80,000 is gifted, and that $60,000 gain is something that never shows up on your tax return. So the intent here is to give what God has grown without erosion. Next is bunching. This is especially important in 2026. So what is extremely complex, I'm going to try to make simple. If you are a person that gives annually, and I believe everyone in here is, and I'm just using in my example $15,000 a year. It doesn't matter in this instant whether you give $1,000, $100,000, or $1 million in a year, unless you give to a level that meets these two criteria down here, that exceeds the total. You're going to itemize if you're going to get a tax benefit. And so in 2026, married filing jointly, it's $32,200. If your itemized deductions don't exceed that, then your annual giving doesn't have a tax benefit. Not
Question?
Okay.
Is that with the new One Big Beautiful Bill?
This is the One Big Beautiful Bill. I'm getting ready to get to part 2 of that in a second, Kobe. And so the other oddity is this. See my little second bullet point? There's a new hurdle. You have to clear the 0.5%, trust me, it won't stay at 0.5%, AGI floor on charitable gifts. So You make $200,000 of income. We apply that 0.5% so that's $1,000. The first $1,000 you donate is not even eligible to be itemized. And so the concept here is, rather than giving $15,000 a year or whatever is below the itemized level, what if you bunched your giving and you gave 3 years in 1 year? Now, some of you may go, well, I like giving it as I go, as God leads me. Next slide will cover that. But what bunch giving says is, I'm going to give all $45,000 in 1 year, itemizing that year, and then I'm going to take the standard deduction in the subsequent years, right? So you're given the same over the 3-year period, but you're choosing to bunch, and especially in those years possibly when your income is higher, whether that's an asset sale, higher income bonus, whatever it may be. And so the concept here is, instead of $15,000 in a year, year after year with no tax benefit, you bunch those gifts into 1 year for $45,000, itemizing and saving that year, and then taking your standard deduction in subsequent years. Same total giving with a much better tax result. The common comment I get on this is, well, Andy, wait a minute. What if, again, I want to give as God leads year after year? And that's where the usage of a donor-advised fund comes into play. Now, you can do a donor-advised fund with any custodian, multiple custodians out there, but think of a donor-advised fund, and I'm going to make it super simple, as a Roth IRA for your giving. You put the dollars into the account. You are as conservative, moderate, or aggressive as you want, so it can be like a bank instrument or a diversified portfolio, whatever you want. And you get a deduction. It's an irrevocable gift for whatever you give. So think back to that bunching. You do that $45,000 because you want to go ahead and get that tax benefit that year, or you have a high taxable event that year with the sale of an asset or a bonus or an equity buyout in a business you own, whatever it is, and you give it to the donor advised fund, okay? The reason that's better is, instead of giving as your income arrives each year, if you're strategic with a donor advised fund, you get the full deduction in the year it goes into the donor advised fund, and then you get to direct how it's invested, and you get to direct over time when you want the amounts you want distributed to the charities. Now, you don't get another deduction then. Remember, you got the deduction when you made the deposit, so there's no deduction on the future distributions, but it's a tool. In essence, it's like a family foundation without the complexity and expenses for you to park dollars into an account designated as a donor advised fund for you and your family to rally around if you do want to give a large gift in a given year. So high income year or bunch gifts into the DAF, and then you can give it gradually over time to your discretion or all at once. There's no, you control the gate on when it's distributed. So you're planning ahead, you're involving your family, and you're giving thoughtfully and strategically. So my goal here, again, some complex tax stuff around investing, retirement planning, and charitable planning, is that you give faithfully and wisely in ways that ensures more reaches the mission, and every dollar you intend for ministry arrives fully. I think we're doing Q&A at the end. Okay, or I can take questions now, whatever you prefer. As I said, there's my contact information with offices here in Sevierville and Knoxville. Glad to help in any way I can. I didn't put anybody to sleep, so I'm going to call it a success, but I hope this was meaningful and beneficial, and thank you for your time.
All right. Kobe Harper is going to speak to us next, and thankful for him being here today.
Oh. Oh. Are we ready to go, Lisa? Well, my name's Kobe Harper. I guess I've known Lisa because our two boys played t-ball and other soccer and you name it. So I've probably known them close to 20 plus years and got to know Skip ever since they've gotten married. I didn't recognize him this afternoon when he came in. He had hair back then the last time I saw him. But anyway, I'm really thankful for being here. But back in the fall, and really how this whole thing started was, I was meeting with Lisa, and we were talking about how to give these eternal, lifelong gifts to keep a charity from going on. And there's a professor, his name's Russell James. He teaches at Texas Tech University, and he's if you want a financial planning degree, that's the best place to go there, or Indiana University. But anyway, so I was showing him these books. He said, "Well, you need this book. It's called The Biblical Fundraiser." And so anyway, I bought the book. So when Pastor Woods, if I call you doctor, excuse me, last year, January 17th, I went in to have a heart cath. Ended up having triple bypass surgery. Also, I have AFib and SVT, 2 types of irregular heartbeat. My priest, Smokey Oak, said I cheated death last year 8 times. So I know the good Lord has a mission for me. But, so anyway, I've been doing this May 1st of this year, 44 years. I'm a chartered life underwriter, chartered financial consultant. I work, I'm a member of the $1 Million Life Roundtable. It's an international service organization. Excuse me. And so basically there's 3 levels. First level, core of the table, top of the table. I'm a top of the table producer. So I work with people, I help them enjoy their wealth. And I guess that's that. So I hit this little button there to go for it. Well, I didn't do it right. Oh, there we go. So the book, The Biblical Fundraiser. I was, as part of all my, I did all my rehab work at LeConte Medical Center in Sevierville. They had a cardio rehab. It wasn't much bigger than this room, so they built a new facility. Some of you may know Linda Ogle. She gave a lot of money. I gave some. So anyway, they had appreciation. The Covenant Foundation had a donor appreciation down at the ballpark back in November of last year. A gentleman named Mr. Storm. It's the concrete plant up there in Danbridge New Market, the Quick Ride or whatever it's called. He read that scripture, and that changed my whole life of not just trying to tell you about how terrible life insurance works. And so if you read that, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life if truly life. So basically, taking what Pastor Wood said, there's 3 types of givers. There's the hoarder, who, he had a barn, now he wanted to build the Superdome. Then there's the prodigal son, wine, women, and song, and blew it. Or there's the joyful giver. So that's what I do. I help people enjoy their wealth. So if you give, like from your abundance, you're going to come back 100 times, just like the good Lord says. These next couple slides, and I'll be brief with these. Charitable owned life insurance. I mean, you may have an insurance policy that maybe it's served its purpose. You could give it to an existing policy, to Wares Valley Ranch or any other charity, and they become you give them the ownership. Now they're the owner and beneficiary. So at your eventual passing, they get the money, whatever the face amount may be. Okay? Then, now the next ones are, you name the beneficiary, etc. There's all different types of permanent life. You want to do permanent life insurance. Term insurance doesn't work. I'll be 75 in November. I can't buy term insurance anymore. Plus, I'm uninsurable. But anyway, so you have your traditional whole life products, usually like New York Life, Mass Mutual, Northwestern Mutual. Those mutual companies, that's who provides those type of contracts. Then you have universal life. That's basically, it's like a permanent insurance, but I call it term to age 100. So you fund it to, whatever. So basically, it doesn't build very, very little cash value. We don't sell those interest sensitive much anymore. Variable life, it's called now variable universal. It's like mutual fund life insurance. So you have a death benefit, you put in all different types of sub-accounts. Equity index, we don't do that much anymore. Then the last, I guess it would be an index UL. So basically it's an index, most common one is S&P 500, okay? So basically when I work with my clients on and then over the years, we've probably written over $25 million of death benefit, charitable life insurance. And out of those, we paid off about $5 million in different charities. And some of those policies, we've used over $2 million of cash value that they use to fund different opportunities within those different organizations. I'm currently working with my fraternity, Phi Sigma Kappa, and their fundraisers to do this. Also, I'm working with the Alpha Tau Mega Foundation. Basically, ATOs, I don't know how many years ago, anyway, they had about $5 to $10 million corpus. They went out to their brothers. They bought, they bought it. Anyway, they bought a bunch of life insurance. Anyway, their corpus is now over $20 million because people passed away. So it's a way to grow the corpus. Last summer, I played in a charitable golf tournament for Aeromont in Gatlinburg. I'm sure everybody knows who RB Summit is. Pat's, ex-husband. So he asked me how we played with my team. We didn't win, obviously. So did any of y'all know Margaret and Earl Worsham? There's no telling how much money they've given in Sevier County, Knox County, and all over the country. So I had a unique situation. I first met them about 15 years ago. My wife was the executive director of United Way in Sevier County. So I met them one night and came close to them. RB's first words. She had just passed with breast cancer. She'd been fighting about 4 years. Well, anyway, did you sell Margaret any life insurance for the benefit of Aeromont? No. Well, I couldn't because of my wife. I mean, I probably could, but I didn't because I thought it wasn't the right thing to do. So whenever you give your monies to Wares Valley or church or whomever, whenever you pass away, the money stops. So here's a way, using life insurance, to guarantee wherever you want to give that policy to, but hopefully it's Wares Valley Ranch, that it lasts forever. Okay? So basically, you have three beneficiaries. Here's your assets. There's your family, the charity. Well, obviously you don't want to go to Uncle Sam. And just like Andy said, if you have a retirement account, he's your silent partner as we speak. So basically, this is a hypothetical thing that, let's just say somebody wanted to give $1 million to Wares Valley Ranch. So this is based on not the big beautiful bill tax deduction, but the previous bill. So I give $1 million, my net tax is about $550,000, my net cost. So I'm gonna write you that check to Wares Valley Ranch for $1 million. You're gonna go out to an insurance company, apply for a policy on my life, based on a standard underwriting. It's gonna purchase $5.5 million single premium life insurance policy. I pass the next day, it goes to the charity, okay? Now, I'm sure Andy's the same way. He works with his clients and my clients. It doesn't matter if we're doing charitable planning or estate planning or whatever it may be, there's a process. So you want to get that together, what are your goals? Why do you want to support Wares Valley or whomever? Find out what your passions and your concerns are. Then we design the program. We work with your financial advisors. We can work with Adam, who's a tax attorney, your CPA, whomever. So we want to work as a team for your benefit. And then let's just say, hypothetically, we do business with you today. This time next year, we're going to do a review and see where we go from there. This one shouldn't be in here, but it's, because I know Pastor Woods doesn't like debt. But if premium financing is used a lot of times for estate planning, business succession, you can also very carefully, if you do it right, for charitable life insurance. And you got to have the right person to do this. And I probably shouldn't have it in there, but basically I'm going to talk about that because obviously you don't like debt. But it wouldn't be your problem, it'd be the donors. But anyway. This is assuming that a foundation has a $16 million corpus in their foundation. So basically we're just doing a 2% charitable multiplier. So assumed an 80-year-old standard non-smoker male, it would buy a single premium, $453,000 death benefit. The carrier would be John Hancock. I represent all the major life insurance companies in the U.S., but they're the most favorable when it comes to underwriting charitable life insurance. And one of the kind of number one requirement is you got to be a patron of that charity. You just can't somebody walk off the street and say, you can't do stranger-owned life insurance. So anyway, we're using your money. You're the owner premium payer, the beneficiary, so it's one premium paid. I passed the next day, so put in $320,000. You gained $133,000 on top of your corpus, okay? And that's it. Any questions? In the back of that folder is the presentation, plus there's a little form. It's really for all three of us, Andy and Adam and myself. You'll check the box, whatever, how you think we did or whatever, to make it or do it better. We'd be most appreciative.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. All right. Adam is going to come up. I will tell a tax lawyer joke. No, I'm just kidding. I don't actually know any great tax lawyer jokes. For those of you who know Seth Hauser, his brother is an excellent tax lawyer, and I said, Matt should be a professor. He'd be really great at teaching tax law. And his dad said to me, Clayton, don't you know Matt? Don't you know his personality? And I said, Mr. Hauser, you've never taken tax law in law school. So Matt is personality plus for a tax law professor, and I think that you have a great personality as a tax attorney. Thanks for being here today.
All right, so Andy and Kobe have talked about what you do while you're alive. I'm going to try to help you when things end. Let's see, I've never used one of these clickers, so bear with me. All right, since this photo here, I've added a child. I went to the American College of Trust and Estate Councils in D.C., finalizing a seminar I've been in for the last year. And one of the professors got up and was talking about jumping in straight to what you're talking about is no good if you don't know who the person is. So this is my family. I'm born and raised in Pigeon Forge. I've got 2 children. There's only one in that photo. That's from a few years ago. And you can see the most recent addition right there with my lovely wife. The highlight of my office is my dog is there every day. People don't come to see me. They come to see my dog. I did that just because I wanted her there, but I had no idea the impact that it has when somebody loses someone, having a dog there at the office. So it was an unintended benefit that's worked out really well. All right, as I said, born and raised in Pigeon Forge. Lisa went to school with my parents. Kobe is got a son that I graduated with, so there's a lot of friendly faces in here. Went to East Tennessee State University, was there for 4 years, came down to Knoxville, went to law school. Never thought that I would come back to Sevierville and practice law. Been there ever since. I was very fortunate to practice under Chuck Edwards, who was a retired judge, for the first 5 years of my practice. I would be remiss, the people who put this together for me as well as who keep my office running are these 3 folks. And again, they make me look much better and brighter than I actually am. I wanted to start also with, I'm going to go back here. My grandfather's a 91-year-old Baptist minister. So coming here and being able to speak to this is dear on my heart, as well as I've got an 8th generation farm that my boys now live on that I moved back to, once again, not thinking I would move back to the farm that I was raised on, which is about 3 miles from Wares Valley Ranch. It's just right over the ridge. So there's a lot of commonality in things that have interwoven or dovetailed with Wares Valley Ranch. My father's wife is a current Baptist preacher at First Red Bank Baptist Church. So once again, having the background of how I was raised and what the Wares Valley Ranch does is very close and dear. All right, let's talk death taxes. First and foremost, Tennessee abolished inheritance or death taxes in 2016. You can die with $100 million. It's not going to impact you at all. For married couples, starting January 1st of this year, you can die with $15 million, and I'm not worried about taxes or tax consequences whatsoever. As a married couple, you get a $30 million deduction. We've got 2 estates currently. One is a $100 million estate where they did no planning, and it is an absolute debacle. I've got one where they did planning 20 years ago and didn't update anything, and it's a $45 million estate. They should have went to Mr. Harper or perhaps Andy and gotten life insurance to pay the estate tax, because your estate tax above those exemption levels are 40%. So on that $100 million estate, we're looking at around a $30 million estate tax right now. All right. The question I get asked every day, right, and we're fortunate, we probably do 300 or 400 wills and trusts a year at the office, is do I do a will or do I do a trust? All right. Depending on your circumstances, I'm going to give you the answer that fits. I don't have a magic bullet. I wish I did. I'd be the richest lawyer in town. The truth is, trust work when you have property in different states, or if you have high net worth and we're trying to avoid estate taxes. We're going to do irrevocable trust. We're going to do charitable remainder trust, things that Kobe and Andy probably work with. However, for most people, we're just doing a simple will, right? And again, I'm happy to share this. If we don't hit what you're interested in, I'm happy to share any of this with you. You can contact my office. They're simple, they're cheap, they're easy to modify. I've had several lately that actually came in to see me on Wears Valley Ranch where they have family and they're leaving a good portion to family and also a significant amount, depending on how much they have left when they're gone, to Wears Valley Ranch, right? Likewise with St. Jude's, we just gave $800,000 to St. Jude's tax-free, right? Because they came in, because they were able to do these things. As you'll notice here, right, as I was sitting here trying to modify this, every one of these is going to have a pros and a con. Every single one of them is going to say whether it's subject to court supervision or whether it's not subject to court supervision. Depending on the facts in the case, that can be good or bad, right? If I have people that are difficult to deal with, I need a court to intervene, right? If I've got a trust that doesn't allow that, then we're going to have complications, right? The problem with a will, right? It does go through probate, but I have court supervision, so when I have problems, I can deal directly with the court. I wanted to add, my grandfather was very disappointed in me when I became a lawyer and not a preacher. And I missed earlier, but those $15 million, they will get cost of living increases annually. So that will continue to go. The one common thing that comes into my office is that trust avoid probate. It's not true. Do y'all deal with that much where they think it avoids probate, they forget to fund it, right? You forget to put a piece of real estate, a bank account doesn't have a beneficiary, a brokerage account doesn't have a beneficiary, they leave something out of the trust, they've wasted thousands of dollars on a trust and still end up going through the probate process, right? So once you explain that, it really helps if you're going to have a trust to make sure that it stays funded, right? And that means whether it's an annual or every couple of years checking in and making sure that everything's in that trust so that we do avoid probate, sometimes that's worthwhile. But it is commonly overlooked. Whether you inherit a piece of property, many people that have major assets forget what all they have, right? So we've ran into that quite a bit as well. Trusts are overly expensive. If we become irrevocable, I'm sure you've got problems with irrevocable trust because your basis stays at what it was, right? And you don't get that stepped up basis on the increase or the appreciation in value, especially with a brokerage account, right? I want that stepped up basis. I don't want to miss out on that tax advantage. Let's talk real quick about probate. Everybody has a horror story about probate. Or does anybody? Let me ask it that way. Has anybody dealt with probate in a negative way? Interesting. Okay, well, my family went through probate on our family farm for 7 years. At the end of that probate process, again, didn't plan on being a lawyer at that time, the court forced the sale of our farm. It sold for $800,000 in 2007, and the attorneys got $500,000 of it. That's why probate gets a bad name, right? And I tell that story every single day, right? My great-grandmother didn't do any planning. People started fighting, and the court was forced to sell it due to what was happening. That's not standard, right? We usually do about 120 probates a year through my office. Out of those, 100 are smooth. The process lasts 4 to 6 months, depending on what's going on. State law says there's a 4-month creditor claim period where they can make a claim to the court and get paid. Outside of dealing with that, we usually wrap it up, pay St. Jude's, pay Wears Valley Ranch, whomever the beneficiaries are, or transfer the real estate, right? Like the like kind you were talking about with the University of Tennessee. All that happens pretty quick, subject to the exemption level with estate taxes. All right, testate means you die with a will. It's very easy. You follow the dictates of the will. Your executor has to do that. They typically don't have discretion. If you have a problem, you have court supervision to make sure that it goes to the proper people. If you die without a will, which happens very, very, very often. And by the way, wills aren't expensive. They're $400 or $500 for a simple will. They can get complex and would go up, but it's not that bad. You die without a will. I've got one right now with 200 heirs. They're not going to get much, right? Because we had to pay $11,000 for an heir search to get all of the folks, right? Once attorney fees are paid, once heir search fees are paid, there's not a lot left over typically. So again, even if you think your estate's simple, right, depending on what state law would do, and by the way, most people don't realize it doesn't roll over to your spouse. You die in Tennessee without a will and have children, your children will get, let's use the example, you have 2 kids. 2/3 goes to the kids, 1/3 goes to the surviving spouse. It's typically not what most people want, right? On top of that, although everybody says their kids will give it back, I'm here to tell you, that doesn't happen. All right, so real quick, types of probate. Most lawyers that don't deal with estate tax planning wouldn't know most of these. Full estate is what we just talked about. That's where we publicate in the Mountain Press or the local newspaper in circulation. 2 consecutive weeks. That begins our 4-month creditor claim period. We're usually able to liquidate brokerage accounts, transfer real estate, do everything that we need to do within that first 4 to 6 months, and then end the probate process. A simpler or more expedited probate is called a muniment of title. That's simply where I've got a piece of real estate, it's not planning on being sold, and we know who it goes to. We use the last will and testament, we record it in the Register of Deeds once we've met with the judge and got it approved, and then it becomes theirs. They can't do anything with that real estate for 1 year. After 1 year, they can sell it, but we do avoid going through the full probate process, and it's usually half the cost of an estate. The next is a small estate administration. All right, again, there's some requirements here, and it's changed recently. To do a small estate administration, you can have no real estate in the estate, meaning we're simply personal property or cash. You have to be below $50,000. I had one appointment this morning before I drove down here. They were about $30,000 away from being able to do a small estate administration, right? And so again, it pushed it over, and I told them they could roll the dice, but if they get looked at or audited, we're going to have problems, right? So again, they chose to do the full estate. That being said, as long as we're below $50,000, we can do that. We go to court one time, we vest the property, and then we pay creditors and move on. Last but not least is an affidavit of heirship. That's what happens when someone dies without a will. We want to avoid going through probate, and all heirs are in agreement. We can record an affidavit in the Register of Deeds office and vest the real estate. Before I change here, because I've got a few notes here, what I've been noticing is a lot of blended families, right? Against my grandfather's wishes as a Baptist minister and my father-in-law's, right? Most families, I would almost say 60% of the people coming into my office have blended families, meaning they both have children from prior marriages or relationships, and all that does is cause problems if we don't get it set on the forefront. All right. Again, everybody wants to typically avoid probate. That's why they come into my office, unless I can convince them to do a will and the benefits of that in court supervision in most cases. These are other options. The first option is a life estate deed, where we can transfer real estate to a remainder beneficiary and then keep it in the name of the person who just transferred it. It's there for life. Nobody can take it from them. Nobody can run them off. There are benefits to that, right? There's a 5-year look back for Medicaid. And so if we can keep the individual from going into a nursing home facility ran by TennCare, we can potentially keep that from being taken by the state later on if they run out of funds. However, once again, there's always consequences, right? There's going to be a pro and a con. I did a deed for a lady who had 2 boys. She was divorced. They were in their 40s. She deeded it to them, the remainder interest, her for life. One of them abruptly passed away in COVID. So his 50% went to his spouse who had been cheating on him. So now mom's living in a house knowing when she passes that the cheating spouse is going to get 50% and her son got the other 50%. Thankfully, she was a good daughter-in-law and a bad wife, and she deeded all the property back, so that situation worked out. But the point is, I didn't see that coming, nor did anybody else. So you have to be very careful when you do that. Joint accounts, typically I'm telling people I want beneficiaries or I want it held jointly, simply because I want all of that to pass outside of the probate process and go straight to the beneficiaries. I assume you would both fully agree with that. The only thing that I want going through probate is really your real estate and your personal property, and that's really to get that stepped up basis so we don't pay any capital gains when the new beneficiary receives it. POD, same way. If you don't hold it jointly, I want you to have beneficiaries on there, preferably contingent beneficiaries if your spouse or other family members are on it jointly. The only caveat to that is your IRAs can't have joint account holders on that, so you want specifically spouse because there's no tax consequences when it rolls over. Is that correct? However, if it's other beneficiaries, then they're going to have a 10-year drawdown period where they have to pay that tax. All right, and these are ancillary documents that usually go with the power or the last will and testament when they come in. Durable power of attorney, that helps with financial decision making. A healthcare power of attorney, when someone becomes incapacitated, that they can then make healthcare decisions, and a living will or an advance directive that says what they want to happen with end of life, whether it's organ donation, whether it's cremation, and then of course end of life procedures, okay? All those dovetail together. They need to be done appropriately and then checked on periodically to make sure that everything's still in place. So that is the end, but I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any. Yes, sir.
I need a business card because I need to update on all that stuff you just said.
Happy to provide it. I'm going to give you my pen because I didn't bring any because I'm really bad at this stuff. But I'll make sure that myself or Lisa get my information to you. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Inside of the healthcare power of attorney is the HIPAA authorization, typically. Yes, sir.
What's the difference between death taxes and estate tax?
Same thing. Republicans call it death taxes. The other side, liberals, call it inheritance taxes.
So you said at the beginning that Tennessee got rid of it.
We abolished it in 2016. That's correct. Yeah. Best thing that happened. Right. So again, we've got so many people moving here from California, especially where I'm at in Sevierville. Well, you all as well. California, New York, Wisconsin, and they're taxed so heavy. So when they come in, they want a trust to avoid all the different processes that go through there. It's not how it is here. We're simple, right? It is a simple process if done properly on the front end, whether it's through a will of trust or both, right? I've had people that want both documents for different reasons. So trusts clearly get very, very complicated. I think Andy and Kobe would agree with me on that, especially when we start doing charitable remainder trust. Those take time, right? And you really have to look at the tax consequences, make sure that everything's set up properly. Again, rare, should have been done in the two estates I've got going right now so that they wouldn't be paying the government $20 and $30 million. Okay?
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
In your IRA, that the spouse is the only one who doesn't pay tax.
Rollover tax.
What if the charity is listed as the beneficiary of your IRA?
I think he would tell us it would go straight without tax. Is that accurate? Yeah. Yeah, and again, that's why I think a comprehensive plan with, and again, I work with Kobe, I work with Edward Jones, we work with everybody, right? Depending on where they come from. I've got people from Wisconsin who are still with Edward Jones, right? They won't change their folks, so we work with whoever it is that we're dealing with to make sure that everybody's on the same page, right? Because sometimes these people in Wisconsin don't know why they're doing a will, and I have to get on there and explain how different the process is here compared to there, right? But the short answer to that is yes.
So, assuming I was here, and I have 2 children, and I'm thinking about, I want to give some to a charity and some to, like, my house maybe, to my kids to fight over.
Mm-hmm.
So, that way, if the children got my retirement fund, that could throw them into a very high tax bracket as that comes out.
Correct.
So it'd be beneficial to make the IRA
That's correct.
them as the charity beneficiary where my property or other assets maybe go to my children if I didn't want to split it up.
I mean, I'm going to defer to Andy, but I think that's accurate. You're not going to have any erosion if it goes straight to the charity, right? And once again, I would want that to be the case with it being a beneficiary or all that set up so that you're not even dealing with a probate attorney other than for that real estate. And if that's the case, I'm probably going to recommend a muniment of title because it's half the cost, it's quick, it's efficient, and then after a year they can figure out what to do with it. Now, if they want to sell it, that's a different story, right, we have to do a full probate if there's a sale, but depending on the circumstances, yeah.
And back to something Andy mentioned, you were talking about qualified charitable distributions as far as, when they come out of the, to go to a charity, that is not a tax deduction at that point for the, like normally when I give to West Valley Ranch, that can be a tax deduction if I itemize. But out of the QCD, it's not, because you've already got your tax benefit. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
so you don't need the tax deduction because it didn't show up as income on your return. The deduction reduces the income on your return, but the QCD didn't show up as income, so it had the same effect.
One thing to answer your question about that IRA, okay, with the retirement account. Because we have a tiered tax system, it's not 40%. Everybody thinks it's 40, but it's, you work your way up to get to 40. So if you do the math, and it's complicated, but you can start taking distributions out of that retirement account IRA and convert it to a Roth.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna have to pay the tax, you gotta pay the tax man. But now another thing is, if you have insurance or insurable or whatever, you can use your life insurance and use that to help pay the tax. So then the kids have, tax-free money. There's a whole bunch of ways to skin that cat, but you still gotta pay the tax man.
Yeah, I mean, again, the one thing that I've noticed with the larger estates that have come in, have they done any life insurance planning? Right, there's sufficient cash to do that, then we wouldn't be stuck with an actual bill because it would have been paid for already through an irrevocable life insurance trust or something of that nature. So, anybody else?
Explain how it works.
No.
I'd love for us to all thank Lisa Radmore for putting this together. She did an awesome job.
I appreciate the speakers, and I also am grateful for the 3 students that came out today, Rebecca, Rebel, and Savannah.
Thank you, guys. We have received in the last few years a bunch of estate gifts that have been an incredible blessing, an answer to prayer, and have enabled us to do things that we otherwise couldn't have with our program. And some of those stories have been miraculous, where we needed exactly this much money, and where's that going to come from? And then an estate gift that was given covered exactly what we needed. And the Lord provides for us so well. One other element, and I talked about frustration of donative intent. I don't even know if I explained that well, but basically, you're allowed to do something different with whatever was given if you can no longer fulfill the original gift. We have folks who have asked about giving a donkey to the ranch, and they would like to give that donkey with a gift that would cover the donkey's life. Brian would tell you, we don't want 15 of those kinds of gifts. If you have a parrot menagerie or whatever, please don't. But there really is something, I think. I was talking to a friend who was asking me about his planning. And he said, how do I know what I should do? And I said, if you kind of think about as if in heaven you're peering down and saying, hey, they're opening that envelope. What makes you excited to think about? What makes you excited to think about as what someone is going to receive from you after you passed away? That's just an easy way to do that kind of planning. And again, please don't say, I think I was hearing from Clayton I should give with 15 different gifts and they're designated. And this is only if you can buy red trucks, because I've always liked red trucks. So please, no thank you. Please, that's not great for us. But if there are things where you're like, you know what? I love horses. And I would love to see horses for the next 50 years at the ranch. And I'm setting up this gift and it's for horses. That's awesome. And there are ways in which some of our leadership is directed by donors in a way that feels like a blessing. We have a new ropes course that's going in right now at the ranch. That's because people gave to the ropes course. They wanted to have a ropes course redone. Well, I'm not spending that money on anything else. We're spending it on the ropes course. And so if there are things that you're extremely passionate about, that could be one of the ways that God's going to bless us and show us what we're supposed to do. So we're happy to answer any other questions that y'all have, but as somebody who has benefited significantly from estate gifts, I just want to say that we're really thankful to have the folks here doing the planning. I think the government's made it, at least over the last 30 years, has made it better. Certainly easier to avoid all taxes if you're a billionaire than if you're a regular person, but we have strategies that are really helpful. The other thing I'll say, and my friends the Canes are here, and we talked, that's one of the first meetings I think I ever had when I became executive director. If you ever want to sit down with me, I'm really happy to do it. I have more questions than I think are typical, probably because of my background as a lawyer. And so those questions are just trying to help people. I'm very passionate about helping people think through all of the questions about the end of their life. And I would say that baby boomers as a generation had parents who did not like to talk about this stuff or think about this stuff and who never wanted to be a burden. And in some ways, that was a blessing. And in some ways, that was a deep curse. You know, when are we going to talk about cars? I have talked to my parents and my wife's parents. I have a good relationship with my in-laws, and it was only pretty awkward, not incredibly awkward, about how do you decide when you're not going to drive anymore. It's better to decide that now than to decide it when somebody's 87 and they've had a couple of accidents and who's going to tell them. And so these are conversations that are around the blessing of planning that is a blessing to everybody in your life who loves you and who wants what's best for you in those last chapters. So if you want to sit down and do that, I'm happy to do that with you. But thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for blessing us with your presence. And it sounds like from overhearing stuff with my ADD that I need to talk about cows with several of you. So God bless y'all. Thank you very much for being here.